So, a lot of discussion on the modes of nature and how we are bound. And in our last session, in session 4, we talked about liberation, how to actually become liberated and transcend the modes of nature, how to become free from the influence of this world. And now we're going to talk about that. So Hare Krishna, this is the beginning of part 5. And Arjuna asks a question from Krishna, because Krishna said in the verse 20, when the embodied being is able to transcend the 3 modes, Arjuna says, by which symptoms? Well, let me read the Sanskrit. Kerlingas trigunan etan atito bhavati prabho kim achara katam chaitam trigunan ativartate. So Arjuna inquired, my dear Lord, by which symptoms is one known who is transcendental to the 3 modes? What is his behavior, and how does he transcend the modes of nature? Well, Arjuna asks 3 questions. He says, what's the symptoms of someone who's transcended? Up to now, Krishna has been talking about the symptoms of those in goodness, passion, and ignorance. What is his behavior? How does he conduct himself? And how do you do it? How do you become transcendental? Here is Krishna's answer, and Krishna answers the first 2 questions here. What are the symptoms and what are the behavior? They're quite similar. And okay, I will read the Sanskrit. This is verse 22 to 25, so there's 4 verses. Listen to the beauty of the Sanskrit. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Prakasham cha pravritim cha moham eva chapandava nadveshti sam pravrittani nanivrittani kankshati udashina vadashino gunaryo na vichalyate gunavartanittevam yovyatittashtinangate samadukka sukasvasta samalloshtashvakanchana tulya priya pirodiras tulya nindatma samstuti mana pamanano tulyas tulyo mitrari pakshayo sarvaramba padityagi gunatita sauchate. Beautiful, isn't it? Okay, here's the translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna said, O son of Pandu, that's his father, Arjuna's father, he who does not hate illumination, attachment, and delusion when they are present. In other words, person who's indifferent to the movements of the modes of nature in the world, which is illumination, attachment, and delusion, goodness, passion, ignorance. Or long for them when they disappear. In other words, he's not attached. They come, they go. Fine. Who is unwavering and undisturbed through all reactions of the material qualities, remaining neutral and transcendental, knowing that the modes alone are active. That we know that it's the world that's acting. And how's it acting? Well, it acts according to the cumulative karma of all living entities here. And individually, we are getting our individual karma, obviously, and we also share part of that cumulative. But this happens, and I'm in this world, I have this body. That means that there is still some residual karma. Let me tolerate it. Let me tolerate the happiness, the distress, and Krishna uses this word, he's unwavering, because he knows now it is the modes that are active, and it's karma that's just simply wearing out. A very nice example is just like a fan. You have a fan, electric fan, that's spinning out. What happens when you unplug it? We say, okay, it stopped, but it didn't stop. It's stopping. And that process of stopping is what happens when you become free from karma. You're not generating new karma, but the old karma is still winding down. Who is unwavering and undisturbed through all reactions of material qualities, remaining neutral and transcendental, knowing that the modes alone are active, who's situated in the self. He knows that he's not this body, fixed in that spiritual identity, and regards alike happiness and distress. While in this world, even transcendentalists are going to experience heat, cold, pleasure, pain. It's the way of the world, undisturbed. Who looks upon a lump of earth, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, because it's only we who say that one thing is more important than another. They're all earth. We have just given it some arbitrary value, that this gold, this yellow stuff, this is really valuable. But there's no value to this world. Therefore, why should I give value to gold? The value is attaining perfection. Who is equal towards the desirable and the undesirable? Because I don't desire anything. Something may be desirable for someone, something may be undesirable, but my interest is not with what's going on in this world. I'm taking the basic necessities in order to be able to fulfill the needs of this body so that I can attain the needs of the soul. But other than that, my business is not here in this world. So desirable, undesirable, I have no interest. Who's steady, situated equally well in praise and blame. And you get praise and blame while in this world, no matter what you do, especially nowadays in our internet world, social media. People are blaming you more than praising you. Honor and dishonor. And sometimes you're honored and sometimes you're dishonored. Who treats alike both friends and enemy. Who's a friend and who's an enemy? People who are in this world, they're acting under the influence of the modes of nature, and they're transient passengers, people who I'm meeting on this journey of life, but ultimately it's a very temporary thing. And now I call someone a friend, and now I call someone as enemy, but those positions can change according to the movement of the modes. And who has renounced all material activities, such a person is said to have transcended the modes of nature. So there's a lot there, and there's a lot to read. I would suggest that you read through those. And before we close, the bottom line: how do you transcend the modes of nature? We've talked all about how we're tied. Now, how do I become untied? Well, we live in goodness, that's good, but living in goodness doesn't guarantee perfection. Living goodness is the platform from which to practice perfection. So here is the bottom line. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatitaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, bhakti yogena sevate, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. At once, mamchayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate. Krishna here is saying that by the practice of bhakti yoga, and if you remember back in the 6th chapter, Krishna had already given the hierarchy of the yoga system, the yoga ladder, and he pointed out that bhakti yoga is the topmost yoga. Now he says that to attain transcendence, he doesn't mention He doesn't mention Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Hatha Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, any other yoga system. Bhakti Yogena Sevate. He says by Bhakti Yoga, Sagunan. Guna meant the modes of nature, and Saguna means transcendental. Sagunan Samatita, Atita. You become transcendental to these modes. You become above. You rise above the influence of the modes. So this is what we want to achieve. And the purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to make us understand how we're bound, to show us how we can become liberated by the practice of Bhakti Yoga. And of course, the entire Bhagavad Gita is about Bhakti Yoga. Particularly, we studied chapters 7 to 12, which are dedicated to Bhakti. And what is the way to practice Bhakti in this day and age? Well, it starts by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. And by reading the Bhagavad Gita, our devotional activities are given a specific direction. Chanting, hearing, engaging in acts of worship, these living in the meantime in the mode of goodness, living according to the mode of goodness, but by practicing Bhakti Yoga, it raises the mode of goodness to spiritual goodness. And I started off by explaining that there are two kinds of goodness: the goodness of this world, the relative goodness, and the absolute goodness of transcendence. And we want to go from this goodness to that goodness. And it's possible by Bhakti Yoga. Hare Krishna.